Greetings, ladies and metalgens, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called A New Fermi Paradox, written by FarmWitch4275. They celebrated, naively as they later found out, while across the Council of Star Worlds, grand celebrations were in progress for a successful conquest of a star system. Proxima Centauri. A new species had recently been found, and conquest fleets from all of the Council's 7 worlds began to line up fleets to take the system. A recently terraformed planet, circling a major choke point in the hyperlane network, controlled by a seemingly new and underdeveloped species. The locals, of course known as humans, didn't like it, so they fought back. The Council's war fleets wiped them out with minimal resistance and found archives leading them to their home world. Now, the Council's war fleets were less preparing for a conflict and better readying themselves for how to distribute the new resources amongst themselves. A preemptive celebration of a premature victory. More slaves for the Katakani Imperium. More workers for the Consortium's mines. New devotees for the Church of the One. More soldiers for the Corsair fleets. New technologies for the Communion. More food for the Rattan hives. More puppets for the Syndicate. Fireworks and displays of grandeur rocked the skies across cities, and every world as celebrations for the newcomers overcame them. Broadcasted across all of Council space was the Grand Fleet, preparing an invasion of the human homeworld. They were in preparation for a full hyperspace convergence, every ship in the fleet of thousands appearing in one system at once. A combination of shock value and sheer force. The fleet began its jump to light speed, and the feed cut out. Everyone began a mass celebration and a yell of happiness and elation. The feed returned. Every world now went dead silent at the sight that greeted them. Dreadnoughts, thousands of them, tens of thousands of them, surrounded by fleets of hundreds of ships, megastructures, and mining complexes surrounded every single planet, moon, and asteroid. Turrets of every conceivable weapon now aimed at them with the intent of pure malice. Dreadnoughts of sizes ranging from 6 miles to 17 miles in length, bristling with thousands of guns. A support fleet of equally armed warships of every conceivable size surrounding these titanic machines, now turning to aim themselves directly at the fleet. As Admiralty began to order a retreat, their barking was cut short by thousands of Council's finest warships being turned into molten slag. The feed cut out, followed by a panic that gripped every Council world. A short-lived panic. Barely hours after the fleets were destroyed, contact was lost with the colony world. It had been shattered in half. Dozens more followed, and within a week of that fateful battle, Council fleets were exhausted, and only the core worlds were left standing. Humanity left no stone unturned. Even previously uncharted locations made by rogues and exiles were cleansed of any presence or taken into humanity's fleets. The invasion began. They were short and merciless, with humanity suffering only marginal casualties due to the ferocity of their attacks and sudden shock caused by their appearance. Nobody had the opportunity to really respond before leadership was arrested and executed on broadcast nets. Generals, admirals, war masters, everyone in a leadership position that didn't die in fighting was dragged broken in front of a human warrior and filled with holes before a screaming crowd. The core worlds were overwhelmed by massive fleets. The dreadnoughts, the warships proving far too much for any ship to handle. Defenses across every system turned to smoldering ruins or molten slag. Bombardments carried out with absurd precision wiped out whatever infantry or military the Council could produce, before drop pods containing thousands of Terran soldiers swarmed out of the craters left by the artillery. The war lasted a month, and there it was, the Grand Council, dragged from their thrones in the council chambers and guarded by a squad of Terran Marines armed with automatic rifles, the last vestiges of leadership before the galaxy brought to their knees, awaiting execution. A broadcast across council space immediately started as humans walked into the council chambers, holding an ornate 7-round revolver pistol. It was of a high caliber, and even for a human, he could feel its heft as it swayed at his side. Well, here we are as predicted, as expected, but not as hoped. We thought better of you, much better of you. We were hoping for saviors and allies on the great journey of life. And what do we find? More of the same. So, here's the deal with this point forward. Welcome to the Terran Union. He stood before the Consortium Council, a minotaur-like creature, and aimed his weapon at its face. The Consortium mines will be silenced and handed over to its workers. All debtors will be freed and paid their owed wages. No more pointless greed. He pulled the trigger, and the councilman's snout imploded upon itself as the bullet hit the back of its head. He moved to the counselor for the Church of the One, the Grand Inquisitor, a 4-legged dog-like bipedal. All of your cathedrals and churches will be burnt down and replaced with libraries, schools, and universities. Your age of ignorance is over. He aimed his gun and fired the bullet, exiting the back of his head and making a mess of the wall behind him. He moved to the next counselor, a quadrupedal reptilian, and aimed his weapon at the center eye. Freedom for slaves! No more slaves! No more slave masters! No more chains! You aren't the worst, but you are the most evil. No more slavery. It is abolished. He pulled the trigger, and the bullet blasted through his skull, exiting his head with such a force it embedded pieces of the counselor's thick bones into the wall. Your arenas are primitive and worthless. They will be torn down and replaced with hospitals, clinics, nurseries. Your concept of honor is as worthless as you are, he said as he raised his weapon to the 4-armed ape counselor's head. The ape's comparatively small head disintegrated at the force of the bullet, splattering on the wall, ceiling, and floor with the green blood. The human made his way to the next counselor, a communion biomachine hybrid, with a brain suspended in a liquid atop its head. Your archives will be seized and destroyed. We will replace them with universities and schools to teach all people knowledge. All, not just a select few. The trigger was pulled, and the bullet passed clean through the suspended brain and its casing. A mixture of purple blood and amniotic fluid slowly leaked out of the 2 holes in the glass casing. The Rattan counselor shivered with his many centipede-like legs and rattled its pincers as the gun barrel was shoved in its mouth. No more food for the swab. No more eating your fellow travelers to the grave. Your feeding pits will be incinerated and replaced with nurseries and gardens. You will learn how not to eat others. The trigger was pulled, and the bullet blasted through the insectoid's body. It flailed to kill it, but it caused it to writhe around in agony as it bled internally, involuntarily throwing up some of the shattered organs. Finally, the syndicate counselor stood his judgment as the gun barrel aimed itself perfectly at his black heart. All of your holdings are now ours. All blackmail material you have will be seized and used in Alpha Core. All of your agents will be used for sport hunting. No more backroom conspiracies, no more lies, no more obfuscation. From now on, only the truth will ever be told. The trigger was pulled and the bullet blasted straight through the counselor's soft flesh, tearing bone as it forced his heart to implode from sheer force. The counselor vomited up a glob of blue blood before collapsing dead. The human looked towards the camera and smiled. You are no longer Rattan. You are no longer syndicate. You are no longer consortium. You are no longer worthy of attention. You are now part of the Terran Alliance. This is not up to negotiation. 100 years prior, I stood before Parliament and waited for the idiotic questions to fill my feed. My foot tapped on the floor impatiently. We wish to ask you some questions. You are the owner of the Jupiter Drive Yards Incorporated, they finally asked. Yes. You are called here to answer for reports to have massively increased materialization efforts and warship production in all of our systems against our orders. Do you deny this? No, I responded simply. The soft murmur came from the crowd. Can you explain your reasoning then? One member of Parliament asked. To all honourable members of Parliament, do you understand the concept of the Fermi Paradox? I asked them simply, with a sadistic grin. One member answered, standing up for his response. The Fermi Paradox is a question on whether or not we're alone in the universe. It postulates that the size of the universe is just too vast for there to be a statistical probability that we are alone. Then again, if we aren't alone, then where is everybody? A round of applause came from others, following his response. Yes, thank you, Your Honor. That is a nice quote from Wikipedia for you just dug up while I was talking. In simpler terms, what if we are alone in the universe? What if we aren't? Here's what everybody seems to ignore. The Fermi Paradox has a third clause to it. I emphasized my words harshly, catching everyone's attention. They looked at me quizzically. I spoke, interrupting any attempt at further questioning. The prospect of being alone in the universe isn't nearly as horrible as people think it is, as is the prospect of not being alone. What truly terrifies me is the thought that we are indeed not alone, but life is basically just like us. I pressed a button, showing a Hollywood screen showcasing a few choice moments from human history. What if, ladies and gents, we came to find distinct and desperate species out there, but their behavior was so indistinguishable from ours that we might as well have simply found our own clones? Hegemonic imperialists, religious theocracies, corporate consortiums, warrior cults, and pirate syndicates. I showcased more examples of human history. Blackbeard the pirate, Julius Caesar of the Roman Empire, the Catholic Church during the Inquisition, the Grecian corporatocracies of Apple and Google. What if we weren't alone, but they were so similar to us in thought and behavior? We might as well still be alone, if only in spirit. What if we weren't the only race, but instead the only idea? Frankly, I find that prospect so much more terrifying than anything else. I allowed the quiet murmur to grasp the crowd. My military forces are expanding to compensate for all three of these concepts, and will continue to do so indefinitely, regardless of your tariffs or support. My reasoning is as follows. 1. If we are truly alone, if we really are the only ones here, then expansion of military assets will be a perfect deterrent against conflict. Everyone knows everyone else. Consequently, everyone knows a friend with a bigger gun. Since everybody knows that, everyone is less likely to pick a fight. 2. If we are not alone and we do not in fact find copies of ourselves in the stars, then so be it. We will be the bulwark against the madness or the tip of the spear. If they turned out to be our allies, we will defend them and stand side by side on the road to the future. If they are our enemies, we will have to force to wipe them out completely, or bring them to heel. 3. If we do, however, get other races in this universe, but they're similar to our behavior, well, we might as well be alone at that point. So we'll make it so. If we cannot find our betters, then we will make them. They wish to be so like us, then they can do so at the business end of a cannon. One way or another, we will be alone again. We can be alone in this universe together. That is my rationalization, and I stand to it. What do you say? I waited for a response. One Parliament member stood up. Aye. 2 more followed. Aye. 10 more. Aye. Motion carried, as you were. End of story. I would quickly like to thank our Tier 5 patrons, Dragzoon WRE, Quantum Wednesday, Ambrose Cattell, Lord Ashrakal, Bushmaster 177, Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, and Arcadian. Thank you very much.